Council members are present in the council chamber for this meeting. Any members of the council who are in attendance remotely will be entitled to speak and ask questions, and when invited to do so by myself. The officers in attendance are the Chief Executive, Nigel Lynn, the Executive Director for Children's Services, Anne-Marie Dodds, the Executive Director for Resources, Joseph Holmes. Sarah Clark will be the Monitoring Officer, will be the Legal Advisor to the meeting. I am assisted by Stephen Chard for the meeting and by Thomas Radborn, who will be the Zoom host. Welcome to the Honourary Alderman in attendance. Before we start this evening's meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind members they were subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. Members across the chamber may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we endeavour to always be respectful to others' views. Have you not done that one? Yeah, no. Yeah, so. Prior to the meeting, if we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such a time that it's safe to proceed. Can everyone present in the chamber make sure that they switch on their microphones when invited to speak directly into them and switch them off when finished? Can I also ask you make sure that you have switched your mobile phones to silent and have turned the sound off on your tablet or laptops? Moving to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We have received apologies from councillors Nick Carter, Lee Dillon, Janine Lewis and Martha Vickers. We also note that I believe Councillor Jeff Mays will be attending via Zoom. We've also received apologies from all Honourary Aldermen and Alderwomen Graham Bridgman, Paul Bryant, Hilary Cole, Rick Jones, Gordon Lundy, Andrew Rolls and Anthony Stansfeld. I don't know if there are any further apologies offered. Councillor Bowitt.
Councillor B. Aloko sends his apology.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 2, the Monitor Officer advised if there had been any declarations of interest submitted prior to the meeting and if there are any declarations from the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that we've had no declarations prior to the meeting and I don't know whether any members. So, sorry, we have a number of.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to declare that I was a former governor at Springfield Primary School, which is one of the schools in review. So I just have to declare, but that was way back in 2014-15, not anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare that my son attends the Downs School, which is one of the schools that is subject to discussion tonight. I'll take advice from the monitoring officer as to whether that means I have to leave at any time. But
I think it is. It's certainly not a disclosable pecuniary interest, so I think it will be a matter for you if it's. I would suggest that at most it would be a personal interest, but it is clearly a matter for you to decide. So do you wish to declare it as a personal interest rather than a prejudicial interest that would require you to leave?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Sorry.
Chairman,
Yes,
two things really. Firstly, I actually went to school, so I know a little bit about this. And secondly, somebody's done the wrong thing. We don't know who. Secondly, I was on the school's forum for 4,000 years from its inception. I don't feel that prejudices me. In fact, I feel it allows me to make an informed comment. I'm in your hands.
Thank you, councillor Dick. I think you made a mistake. I think it was 5,000 years. Thank you.
Shall I just speak loud, Chair? I have no battery apparently. Oh. Well, Councillor Culver has kindly given me access to her microphone. I'm a chair of governors at John Rankin School, which is one of the schools affected, Chair. I've spoken on this matter previously at the council and at the executive and always made it clear that I'm not engaged in any special pleading on behalf of my school or indeed of any other schools involved in this process. It's something that obviously it's an interest, but I don't think it's a prejudicial one because I've taken great care to separate that out from the wider issue. And of course, like other members here, I've got schools in my ward that are affected by this, but then lots of other members do too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to state that one of the schools affected is in my ward, but it's not a prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think probably Councillor Taylor's going to say similar. So one of the schools is in our ward, and I'd just like to confirm that I am going to be speaking about the school, and I am talking in their favour, and I want to make sure that that's okay, because it's going to be very evident when I talk that that is exactly what I'm doing.
I don't think you have a prejudicial interest because the school is in your area.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, similar to Councillor Stewart's comments. One of the schools which I also will be speaking on, if I get the opportunity to do so, is in my ward. Also, my children did attend that school, though that was in the 1980s. And also in the 1980s, I was a member of a fundraising committee at that school.
Thank you. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Harbs?
You did, Chairman, then I put it straight down again. So.
I believe that is it. I can't see any other members wishing to declare. Thank you. Yes, so I think before you start agenda item 3, so listen.
Yeah, we're going to agenda item 3. Proposal for consideration by council as detailed in the requisition submitted on the 22nd of July 2024. Signed by the requisite number of members. The council calls on the chairman of the council to write to the schools forum to request that they review the decision to call back West Berkshire schools surplus funds to be applied to their budgets for the financial year 2024-25. During the meeting, when a motion has been proposed and seconded, I will be asking the monitoring officer to conduct a vote by a show of hands. Speaking times are limited to 3 minutes. However, from the chair, I'd like to propose an extension of 5 minutes for both the mover of the motion and the portfolio holder. So standard agenda item. Does this find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brooks. May I invite, sorry.
So can I please ask members to indicate their agreement with the proposal to extend the speaking times for those 2 members? Thank you. That I can confirm that speaking time has been varied, Chairman.
I'd like now to invite Councillor Ross McKinnon to formally move the proposal as detailed in the summons.
So proposed, Chairman.
Yeah. Can I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair. I'd like to second.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Do you wish to reserve your right?
I do.
Thank you. May I invite Councillor McKinnon to introduce the report? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members and honorary aldermen. This has been a sorry episode for the administration. Head teachers and business managers reduced to tears. Schools threatening legal action against their own council. Parent teachers associations and fundraisers' confidence and motivation shattered. Parents disgusted about their local schools having funding snatched away, and angry statements issued by head teachers' associations scathing of the administration. One of those angry statements came after there was a suggestion at the executive meeting in July that the schools weren't working together as they should. Talk about pouring fuel on the fire. I'm not sure diplomacy is necessarily the administration's strong point. But the irony of that statement was that the schools were willing to work together. In December, the Schools Forum agreed to a clawback of surplus balances to help the high needs deficit, starting from the 1st of April 2025. That's just over 6 months from now. They were willing to do their bit. Good on them, I say. But then the administration pounced. Well, not pounced exactly. 6 months went past. I think a sloth could have pounced faster. 6 months of dither and delay before they informed the schools that actually what they'd agreed to wasn't good enough and they'd be asked to vote again for a clawback from April 2024. That's right. The financial year we were already nearly 3 months into at that time. Budgets had already been set. Teachers and teaching assistants already hired. Refurbishments and repairs already planned. All of that had to go in the bin. Was it a coincidence this was slipped out under cover of the general election campaign? I'll leave that for you to judge. And there's more. The administration went and told the schools that if they didn't vote for the new proposal, they'd appeal to the Secretary of State. Likelihood would be that they'd get an even worse outcome. Only under that threat. Before you start clutching your pearls, that's exactly what it was. Do this or else, a threat. Did the schools reluctantly concede defeat? But the schools having the money confiscated weren't allowed to vote in those proceedings. How on earth can that be just? And then the administration put out a statement saying, oh, it was the school's decision, Schools Forum. It's not a council decision, nothing to do with us, it's all delegated. No mention of the threat to appeal to the Secretary of State. No mention of the school was excluded from the vote. That is gaslighting on an epic scale. For the avoidance of doubt, when I use the word gaslighting, I don't mean the literal illumination of a butane lamp. It has another meaning than the literal. I'm sorry if some members don't get that. It's a turn of phrase. I hope I don't get into trouble. It means manipulating people into questioning their perception of reality. A resident reading that statement from the administration might think, oh, well, the schools voted for it. Well, they must be okay with it then. Nothing could have been further from the truth. That's appalling. How could you issue a statement like that? I get the impression here that the education service is in some sort of chaos. I understand that all of West Berkshire Council's educational psychologists have resigned. I think there were 6. To lose one psychologist might be unfortunate. To lose 2 might be careless. To lose an entire service, something's very wrong. Something's rotten there. That is a crucial service that the council can no longer provide to its schools. Several head teachers during and after this episode have told me that they're now considering academisation, where it wasn't even in their contemplation before this. And all we've had from the administration so far is doubling down. We're right, you're wrong. At no point in this saga have you guys not thought, hang on, are we the baddies here?
1 minute remaining.
You've got this wrong. No, I know you're not baddies. I know you're good people, but you have got this one badly wrong. Your own schools are going to sue you. Parents and teachers are up in arms. PTAs are losing motivation to raise funds, and huge damage has been done to the relationship of trust between the council and its schools. It's hard to admit you're wrong sometimes. I get it. But you can stop this from getting worse. There is a lifeboat here for you. Not a literal lifeboat, again, members. What we need you to do is to tell Schools Forum that you're going to drop the retrospective clawback, that you won't appeal to the Secretary of State, and give them the chance to vote again, free from duress, on starting the clawback from 2025. I hope you take that opportunity. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. I'll open this up to the floor then for debate. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Some good descriptions in there that don't necessarily as I recall them. So first, let me give you a little history as to why we're here. So please bear with me. As you know, many local authorities across the country are struggling with the cost of supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND. Schools have the responsibility for meeting the needs of this increasing number of pupils and are required to provide appropriate support funded from their revenue budgets. Where the level of pupils' needs are higher, some pupils require an educational health and care plan, or an EHCP. This formal statement of needs sets out the support required and, where appropriate, can provide additional funding. This funding comes from the high needs block, which is part of the dedicated schools grant, which comes from the Department for Education. The number of EHCPs has increased year on year, and the cost of providing the support has increased with increasing complexity of need. Recent data shows 87% of local authorities expect to have an overspend in their high needs block, and the total accumulated overspend is expected to rise to 3.6 billion by the end of this current financial year across this country. This has been allowed by the previous government and has allowed this overdraft to accrue. Realising this debt is unlikely to be cleared, the Department for Education has intervened by working with a number of councils to find ways to reduce the costs. This council was invited to join the Delivering Better Values programme, DBV, in its third phase, so we were not too high on the DFE radar. However, they are watching us. They monitor the schools forum recordings. They need to find out what steps the forum and this council are taking to reduce and minimise the spend on SEND. This finally brings me back to the clawback. When the DFE can see millions of pounds sitting in school bank accounts, they assume we're not trying to minimise that debt. Towards the end of last year, the clawback mechanism was reintroduced and voted for by a majority of schools. And actually, I have heard from head teachers that they support this. One of the head teachers was one that actually would be affected by the clawback because they felt this was the right thing to do. This was initially postponed by Schools Forum. When our finance team then received the school's budgets in May, the council indicated it might appeal to the Secretary of State to review the Schools Forum decision, as it went against the original consultation with schools. This is all permissible within the DFE rules. It is entirely possible the appeal could have been rejected, but Schools Forum agreed unanimously to reconsider their decision. They then had more information and wanted to be in control of their own decisions and not cede them to the Secretary of State. The decision was confirmed by the Forum to claw back in this year from balances held at the end of March 2024. This council did not pressurise or threaten head teachers into making any decisions. The funds being clawed back are from school funds which are not committed to any particular staff posts, projects or activity. And this money doesn't come back to the council, but is used to support young people across the whole of our district, going into the high needs block, and it is ring fenced.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. This will make an impact in this financial year. It was also confirmed that no money from the clawback would force any school into deficit in this year. And these monies do not include any PTA or fundraise money by charitable donations or other parent activities. In consequence, I will not be voting for this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Codling. Councillor Boyk.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Codling. I don't think anybody on this side is surprised at much of what you've said.
And we understand very well the situation we're in. We take a very different view, though, on the way it's been managed. And my friend, Councillor McKinnon, mentioned dither and delay. Excellent choice of word. The challenges that facing schools, we understand, in funding their STEM provision have never been starker. The numbers of children being assessed needing higher levels of need with their learning continue to rise, and parents' expectations of schools rise too. We understand that. And this has led, in some cases, to schools running up authorised deficits in their accounts. The education service, your education service, has always worked with such schools to manage their deficits, and government has been lobbied historically to increase funding for higher needs in schools. But until now, no palatable solution has been found, and the overall deficit has continued to grow. This is not a new problem. And the Liberal Democrat group, while in opposition, had clear visibility of it, had they chosen to pay attention. And during your campaigning last year, ahead of last year's elections, and your manifesto, you made no commitment to address it, instead focusing on what you saw as easier targets, such as green waste charges, SIL payments, and football. By the end of the year, Schools Forum was asked to agree a clawback from schools in surplus to address the overall deficit, which they did from financial year 25-26. And this apparently was the wrong answer. And the forum was pressurised, some would say bullied, into agreeing to a clawback effective from last April. And this we know, whatever you say, this has thrown into disarray the budgets of schools targeted for clawback in this way, as they've already allocated their funds, and they will no longer be able to meet all of their financial needs this year. And let's not forget, it is their children who will suffer.
1 minute remaining.
Funds raised by PTAs and other donors will effectively be confiscated, and this will lead to permanent impairment of schools' fundraising capacity. At some point since their election last year, the scale of our schools' challenges dawned on you, on the new administration. You could have taken early and decisive action to address the deficit, or you could have worked with schools and government to seek a long-term solution. You did neither. You dithered and delayed and allowed the schools to set their budgets for the year. Then, in panic, you launched a chaotic raid on reserves, which will cause long-term damage to our schools. Shame on you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. So as you heard earlier, one of the schools, Springfield School, is in my ward, and Councillor Taylor, I believe, may also be speaking. So there are a few points I want to make in regard to the clawback amount for Springfield School. I have here a copy of a pack which was sent to officers, education officers, in mid-August, 61 pages. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to tell you what's on every single page. I have read it though. Until 3 minutes before this meeting, that wasn't even acknowledged. And I find that extremely disrespectful to the business manager and the finance manager who pulled this together across the summer holidays to get that information in as justification for the money that is going to be taken from them, allegedly. The contents of the pack. Back in June 2021, the head teacher wrote to officers in the council expressing concern about the state of the drainage system following flooding that had happened and caused the school to call for parents to collect children as soon as possible during the middle of the school day. Responses came back and drainage inspections were done, and contractors were brought in to do surveys and in their opinion, this was going to be a major piece of work. Nothing has happened to complete that work right up to this point. There have been lots of surveys. There have been more and more drainage call-outs when there has been flooding. And it seems that Springfield themselves have actually suffered due to officers leaving, lack of resources, and for the school subsequently being expected to go back round the loop again and again, explaining and sharing the same information with things that had already been discussed and agreed. The school's own comments in the pack say, from the date of this email, so that's June 21, our argument and justification for the accumulation of surplus funds is that we have been unable to move ahead with most playground and grounds improvement projects due to the ongoing drain issues that have not been resolved by West Berks Council.
1 minute remaining.
The funds being considered for clawback include repairs and replacement of fencing, as well as doors and windows, none of which would be prudent to do when the flooding is still happening. There was a huge downpour today, certainly in Tilehurst, and the school was flooded again. They have mopped it up. I really hope there is no damage done to the work that had already just been repaired from previous flooding. The careful planning of financings to cover these projects and carrying it over year on year since 21, I understand, was with this council's knowledge and guidance in terms of budget planning. And to then have it taken away from them because the team is under-resourced seems to me to be entirely morally unjust, to say the least. And this school, the staff, and of course, all of the children and parents will have been horribly let down should this money be clawed back. I also have anecdotal evidence that other schools are suffering from their fundraising with their PTAs. Now, I'm not going to mention those schools, but as a fundraiser myself, I know how difficult it is. And it only takes one little rumour to stop people putting their hands in their pockets and giving money. And I'd just like to say that at the end of this piece. Thank you.
Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to speak specifically about the Down School in my ward. They've been threatened with a clawback of £490,000. A large proportion of this is not DFE or local authority money. It has been fundraised by the school, contrary to what the portfolio holder said. The money would allow the school to increase much needed classroom capacity and extend the sixth form to accommodate growing numbers. The council has justified its action by claiming that fundraised money should be in a separate account, and in the Downs case they were not, so seizing it from the school is permitted. But West Berkshire Council Scheme for Financing Schools 24-25, paragraph 8.3 states the following: schools may retain income from fundraising activities. It doesn't specify what kind of account those funds should be held in. I've asked the portfolio holder 3 times for evidence of where it is written that it must be held in a separate account and have not been shown any evidence. The DFE told Olivia Bailey MP, any clawback should only be made of money accumulated out of budget shares and should certainly not include any money resulting from fundraising by the school itself. At the schools forum meeting in December, it was agreed the clawback mechanism would be introduced from March 25, as Councillor McKinnon stated, and then this was overturned and it was going to be introduced from March 24, a whole year early. Initially, the schools affected agreed to it being 2025 because it would give them enough time to plan, but obviously the overturning of that did not give them time to plan and they'd committed the funds. At the schools forum this July, a vote was held to approve the clawback decision. Maintained schools likely to benefit from the clawback were permitted to vote on the matter. Affected schools, including the Downs, were prohibited from participating in the vote. This was not democratic. Should the clawback go ahead, this would push the Downs School into a significant deficit position in 2025 to 26. The school contacted the DFE on the 20th of August, raising a dispute with the council under section 495 of the Education Act 1996, which requires the Secretary of State to adjudicate in the matter.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand the council leader met representatives of the school this week and they have been told the council is reviewing the entire process again, which could lead to a lowered clawback for some schools. It seems to me that this process has been unfair. The justification used has no basis in official guidance and the financial stability of the Down School is threatened. I acknowledge that the council is facing challenges with the high needs block, and that is the case across the country, as the portfolio holder pointed out. We know that this is the thing that threatens the stability of the council more than any other issue. But this situation is not just, it's been badly handled. It has destroyed trust between the schools and the council. And quite frankly, it's been completely disastrous for the reputation of this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to raise that a statement set forth
by the administration at this council and previous meetings where questions have been raised or points debated have, to me, been clearly and thoughtfully considered. We have heard how the funds voted on by the Schools Forum will be used to help tackle the very significant growth in the number of school children with special educational needs that we, as councillors, should support in order to keep those most in need to achieve the best possible outcomes. We have heard since 2020 that the number of pupils with special educational needs across our district has grown by almost 50%. None of us here resent that increase in need, and we all agree the money to give that support must be found from somewhere. We know as councillors the council budgets to spend 29 million on special needs children and actually spends 35 million due to this increased demand. And we know we are allowed to roll that debt up. But as prudent people, we know this is unsustainable. We cannot and will not bankrupt this council, so it will be taken over and run by mandarins from Westminster. To me, the sensible approach and socially responsible approach voted on by the Schools Forum was to look to sensible redeployment of the uncommitted reserves. And we should all congratulate the Schools Forum for making that joint decision. The safeguards that have been placed on that decision against any fiscal risk to me, and I am sure all in the chamber, sound sensible and prudent, ensuring no school will go into deficit as a result, and their budget this year will not be impacted. I was concerned in previous debates and questions that the redeployment of these reserves to children most in need sounded like some Soviet-style land grab. It is clear that that characterisation is far from the truth, and this decision has been made by those who are at the very heart of West Berkshire's educational system and are trusted subject matter experts. I hear that listening to subject matter experts is actually coming back into vogue nowadays.
1 minute remaining.
I have said this proposal is not required. I have to say this proposal is not required. The subject matter experts have spoken for the best of outcomes for our district's children with special educational needs and provides a degree of equality that anyone with a heart sees desperately needs to be funded and delivered. I thank you, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Let me say firstly that I fully support all the remarks made by Councillor Stewart, and I will largely talk about Springfield School in my remarks. Perhaps a little more surprising, I agree, I think, with everything that Councillor McKinnon said in his opening remarks in proposing this motion. But let me just continue by saying that I actually moved my two sons to Springfield School. It was a long time ago. They're in their 40s now. And I also served on their, as I mentioned earlier, on their fundraising committee for a couple of years. I never regretted moving my sons there. It was because this school had an extremely good reputation, indeed still does. It gave them a fine education and remains a school that is much loved by its students and parents, past and present. However, it was a shock to me when I learned that Springfield was affected by the clawback of the school school funding. It is no exaggeration at all to say that this has caused immense distress, not only to the school management, but also staff, governors and the wider community. Councillor McKinnon has previously referred to staff being in tears, and I can confirm that this was the case when I met the Springfield head and business manager shortly after the clawback was announced. In its recent evidence submitted by Springfield School explaining the surplus balance, the 63 pages that Councillor Stewart referred to earlier, which I have here with me, the school stated in its preamble that the school budget ratified on the 24th of April had an in-year deficit of £190,678. If the recommended £137,000 clawback is taken, then in the school's budget at the end of 25-26, the forecast deficit is £134,078. So this clawback will have a very detrimental impact on the school's finances
1 minute
in a short
remaining.
space of time. I must also express my concerns over the way in which schools were questioned about the surpluses in the Zoom call, and which, for example, questioned the school on why it had not transferred money from revenue to capital, when the school had previously been advised that it could not do so. There is also submitted evidence to show that projects were having to be delayed due to frequent and ongoing draining and flooding issues, which Councillor Stewart mentioned earlier and have remained unresolved over many years. The school is still awaiting a response to its evidence, but I would expect it to show that no clawback is justified, as I understand has already been decided in some other schools. In any event, I believe the resolution we are debating this evening is appropriate, and although I do recognise the need to properly fund our special educational needs facilities, it shouldn't be done in the way that's been attempted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abbs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I didn't write a speech because I thought I'd come and listen to the debate and make my decision based on the debate. Fundamentally, what I hear is that the government doesn't fund things correctly. And we've said this during the general election, every local election, it comes up time and time again. And if you don't fund things properly, you'll end up in a situation of having to make appalling decisions. I don't think anybody's enjoying making this decision, but it appears to be required because funding isn't being made available from central government. Now, you can blame the Conservatives, but I've not heard a single thing from Labour yet about what's going to change. It's the same old, same old. Oh, you sort it out yourself, guys. And you be the unpopular ones when you have to do it to your constituents. It would have been really helpful tonight to have some of those teachers that were for this here present to speak, and those that are against. Because to be honest, I am pretty upset with politics, full stop, and I don't know who to believe anymore. So what I would like to hear is from the horse's mouth. Now, I could go and see the governors, of course, and do it myself, but that's far too much legwork to go around the whole of Berkshire, meeting every school affected. Now, money sitting in the bank doesn't sit well with me either. You know, spend it if you've got it on your sustainable projects, or at least show that it's committed on a project. Do not claw it back if it's already committed. So there is something to sort out there. If it's already committed, we should not be clawing it back. And, you know, to be honest, what I've heard myself is that some of these schools that are now being quoted as, oh, we're going to move to academy, were actually considering going to academy beforehand. And what I'd really like, I don't really believe in the academy system per se. There are some good ones and there's some bad ones. I'd like the council itself to set up an academy so we can keep our local schools connected to us and help where we can. But that's by the by.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. I won't take too long. The money raised by individuals and given to a school, if there's any example, please, on the administration, give me some solace here. Can you absolutely confirm to me that money raised by members of the public for a school will not be seized in a clawback? And finally, retrospective never works for me. You know, retrospective tax doesn't work for me either. Imagine a nightmare scenario we'll end up with. So making anything retrospective is a bit of a nightmare because it never lets anybody plan. I'm hoping to hear more answers because I assume the debate's not finished. But I must admit the issue for me is central government not funding things properly in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council. It appears to me that there's much confusion, and Councillor Abbs has really referred to it, and perhaps some misinformation about this vitally important issue that we're discussing tonight. It is absolutely my understanding. It is absolutely my understanding that no funds which have been raised by parent-teacher associations, by actual gifts directly into the school, no such funds are being involved in the clawback. That is absolutely my understanding. It's vitally important to understand this. Council, the purpose of this entire this entire scheme is to drive funding from the public purse away from accumulating in reserves to supporting the SEND agenda. Mr. Chairman, I declare an interest, not the declarable interest that would I have to declare to the monitoring officer. In my own family, we have a SEND child. The effort, the need, the one-on-one teaching, in many cases, is summed up in the SEND name, special educational needs. Do SEND children need this support? Yes. Do SEND children deserve this support? Yes. Are SEND children more important than a school building up unallocated reserves of cash? Yes. 3 yeses for SEND. Please do not let us forget tonight for whom we are responsible. Let us not minimise the difficulties and the considerable financial needs of the SEND community. Do we stress SEND? We want above all to put our children first, and second only to that, to work with our schools from Hungerford to Thiel, from Purley-on-Thames to Inkpen, one district, many schools, many, many children. Council, I urge that we commit to children first, and definitely we commit to SEND children and their needs, which are considerable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chairman. Glue sticks. Anyone who has a child or a grandchild at primary school knows that school equipment like glue sticks are absolutely vital to our children's creative and general education. My sister was, until she retired recently, a teaching assistant at a primary school, not in West Berkshire. Her school cannot afford to have both a ready supply of school equipment throughout the year and adequate numbers of teaching assistants, those teachers assistants required to support other children with education, health and care plans, the ECHP. So along with lots of other everyday requirements, glue sticks run out halfway through the school year. But the school can continue to employ their much needed teaching assistants, some of that money allocated from the high needs block. The school is fortunate as it has its own very own special needs unit. My sister was a special needs teaching assistant and has had over the past couple of years the care of many SEND children, including a deaf child she can sign. Until she retired recently, she was responsible for a little blind child and a non-verbal autistic child, both at the same time. Not surprising, you might think, except she works in the mainstream part of the school, and these children are in the mainstream class, not in the SEND unit. Why? Because the SEND unit is constantly full. This picture is being replayed right across the country. As you have heard, the portfolio holder, the high needs block funds children with EHCP even. There are over 576,000 children and young people with education, health and care packages as of January 2024. This is an increase of 11.4% from just a year ago in January 2023. These children will be the responsibility of their councils until they reach the age of 25.
1 minute remaining.
Statistics so far point to this figure not going down. In addition, the high needs block also funds pupils with alternate provision. This includes children who have been permanently excluded. Permanent exclusions are also increasing and rose by 44% from 6,500 to 9,400 in 2023. The clawback process will enable all our young people right across the district to be supported, ensuring they have the correct provision available and the most effective education to meet their specific needs. This clawback does not, I repeat, does not include any funds raised by parents, PTI, and also does not include any funds which are committed for capital projects. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Sommer.
Thank you, Chairman. Much like councillor Abbs, I haven't run the speech tonight and I actually wasn't expecting to need to say anything. But there's a couple of things that I've heard so far already. I've heard about understanding and our understanding. And our understanding, whilst it's important to this, isn't the most important thing to this whole topic. The understanding, which seems to be lacking, is of our education units, of our schools, more importantly, of our head teachers. So at best, it sounds like they're misinformed. At worst, and I won't use the word liars, it sounds like you're suggesting they're peddlers of untruths. Now, that's not acceptable in anybody's book, surely. Send or no send, that can't be acceptable. No one is dismissing the send needs that we have as a district, that each school, each and every school has. And I know from a unit being built in Kennet Valley Primary School in my ward, how important it is. I also know that there are children that will be 500 yards away from the unit that can't get into it. That's not acceptable. But let's not forget the motion this evening isn't about that. It's tangential to that, but actually it's not what's being asked for. And the final thing I wanted to say, Councillor Reid, I'm really pleased to see that subject matter experts are coming back into vogue, because when we had discussions about the local plan, you didn't want to know about them. I had them feeding into paperwork, but you didn't want to know about them. So you can't be that flaky. You can only call them in when it suits. Thank you very much for admitting your failure.
Thank you. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. So I am continually dismayed about the tribal atmosphere in this room, and pick up on what my colleague has just said. Well, I won't speculate as to why, but there's a lot of obfuscation here. The Downs, for example, the Downs have put in writing to the DFE, in writing to the local newspaper, and in writing to their parents that much of the money that is subject to this clawback is money that they have raised through fundraising with their parents. They've put that in black and white. Now, across the way here, people are using words similar to the word liar. Well, if they are telling, do something about that, please. Let's see the truth of it. Frankly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. It's very rare for a school to go to print like that, I have to say. Most head teachers, there was the odd exception, most head teachers are honourable people. I have two general comments to make. One is about management. Beginning of the year, budget was being set, and forgive me, I can't remember whether you were the leader or the acting leader, because sometimes it's difficult to tell when you're acting and not. Sir, you were there. You were there. And you talked about us working together and about good management. And I thought, there's a ray of hope there. We made suggestions about how we should fund special needs. You pressed ahead with, you've got somebody new in your hierarchy who wanted an extra six-figure a post in special needs. And you'll remember at the time I said, well, if you do that, in my opinion, it's a complete waste of money, because what we need is people on the ground working with children face to face. So I'm still waiting for evidence that that appointment has worked. Let's go back to the schools forum. I've sat many, many years, and I don't know the current officers necessarily, but I've watched over the years heads work as best they can for the local authority, especially heads who are in LA schools. They've committed to it. Academies still try, but LA schools, clearly, they work. They often feel pressurised. They often feel bullied. There's no question about that. And they certainly feel that way this time. Budget management, we're encouraging budget management, are not setting a good example, are we? And there's one key thing to remember, having spoken to some of the schools that are involved, the money that's going to be clawed back is earmarked for, well, you don't know. You don't know. I'll tell you what it's earmarked for, to help extra children who have special needs. Don't they matter? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid. No, thank you, all right. Councillor Brooks.
Chairman, at the executive meeting on the 25th of July, I made it very clear that we would undertake a review of the amounts of money that we were looking for schools to pass back to begin a process of managing the unsustainable growth in the high needs part. I made a commitment to have that review. That review is ongoing. Councillor Codling and I have visited Brookfields, John Rankin and the Downs School, and have other visits planned. I hope one to Springfields, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Taylor. I'm not sure that's booked yet. The invite has been offered. We have taken this review very seriously. This is not a token exercise. But, you know, I just don't think you're listening. Because on the 25th of July, I said, Councillor Dick and others, all money raised by a school's PTA from charitable donations and other appropriate actions will be excluded from the calculation of the clawback amounts. I then said it on radio. I then said it on BBC South Today. I continue to say it, and I mean it. It is true. Now, I'm not at all sure if people are listening or not. There is no reference to this in a long report in the Newbury Weekly News today, and also in that newspaper today, new MP Olivia Bailey demands a review. It is happening. And by the 11th of September, the schools have the ability to put in their points to say, adapt what you're doing in terms of taking money from us. It is likely that that review will lead to less money being returned to the high needs block than the 2.8 million that was initially agreed by the schools forum. It's likely it will be less money. We cannot support the motion, but believe me, we have a hands-on approach to looking at each school's reserves, every part of that reserve, SEN money and other reserves, what's committed, what's not committed, what's from PTA and other grants, charitable donations. All of that is being reviewed by me personally with Heather Codling and Neil Goddard going to schools. Down school yesterday morning.
1 minute remaining.
Now, if this school is holding up any commitments, I want them to contact Heather Codling and myself, and we will do our best to help them. If there's any commitments being held up by this authority, we'll sort it out. We will do our best. Interestingly, when we visited a school yesterday, they didn't seem to realise that councillors are here to help. They didn't come to any councillors. Let me be clear. We are a hands-on administration. We can't help if we don't know. So finally, a review is taking place. Let's be clear. We are not pulling any money back that's been committed. We are looking at what should have been committed. And perhaps there will be occasions where we say that should have been committed and we'll allow it to be committed. We will not take your money that has been raised by your parents or by charitable donations. This review is serious. And we intend to ask the schools forum to review amounts, not to abandon the scheme. Now, I'll finally say the opposition, nice manner from MPU, seek to demonise us. The press talk about raids on schools and the language is colourful but unhelpful and spectacularly unfair.
Please
But that
conclude,
won't stop them, of
Councillor.
course. We will not vote for this motion. Thank you for the extra time, Chairman.
Nobody else? May I invite Councillor Marsh to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Chair. The review to which Councillor Brooks refers is obviously very welcome, but can I just point out it wouldn't be happening had it not been for Councillor McKinnon, myself and other members of the opposition minority groups jumping up and down for 2 months making a fuss about this because the schools were specifically told, and I can tell you this for nothing, They were told the money would be taken the next week. They were told that in June at the meeting on Zoom, at which they were told how much money they were going to lose. And the finance managers went away and started looking at the books to see, when are we going to lose this money? What are we going to do about it? Now, had I been allowed to ask my questions that I tabled on July the 18th to this council, 3 days after 6 members of the schools forum, under pressure from the council, voted to claw back £2.8 million from school budgets that had been signed off by the council, I predicted, and it gives me no pleasure to say that everything I predicted has pretty much happened. Anger, dismay and distress in schools across the district, huge amount of work for head teachers and business managers in the last full week of the school year and since, and the stress of the whole summer and having to go into the school throughout the summer to work on this in some cases. The risk to the council's strategy, which we've heard referred to, the schools are much more likely to go off, and this I don't, as a Green, I can tell you we don't like academies as a matter of policy, principle and policy, but there is every risk that some of these schools will go off and want to become academies, because why wouldn't they if they're not going to be able to keep the money that they have raised? 12 schools were targeted to achieve a one-off reduction in the SEND deficit, which even if that was all raised, and Councillor Brooks has just said it won't all be raised, but the original 3 million would still leave a £6 million, a one-off payment that would still leave a £6 million hole in the budget. Now, I'm really unhappy about the fact that, partly as Councillor Dick alluded to, this seems to have become a sort of party thing. Well, you know, these schools, they've got members representing them, councillors representing them from every party and none.
1 minute remaining.
And to say that this is a matter of SEN versus schools building up reserves, well, you've heard members saying that their schools do not have these vast reserves. They don't. The money is to be spent on things it needs to be spent on for the good of the children, including SEND. 2 of the schools on the hit list, Brookfields and the Castle, they only cater for SEND children. Why are you taking money away from schools that provide for
As a point of
children with
information,
special
I must intervene. The point of information, the Castle schools are not included. Please be clear. That is for later, but I do not expect any clawback there. But that will be for the schools forum. They're not included at this time.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Can I just say that what we're proposing is quite modest. Schools budgeted on the basis that a clawback would not take place until the following year, as we've heard. All we want to do is revert to that position, as councillors were not empowered to make that decision. So that's why we're requesting the schools forum to review that decision and reiterate its original position, which was that surpluses over 10% will be subject to clawback from 25 to 26. I urge members to support this proposal so we can move on as a council, so that the schools can move on. We can make a fresh start in that next financial year in the best interest of our schools and our children. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. May I invite the mover of the motion, Councillor McKinnon, to make any concluding comments which should be responded to matters raised during the debate. It should not introduce any new matters.
Thank you, Chairman. Delighted to do so, and thank you, members, for your contributions. So you're not taking the lifeboat then? I really don't know how you can sit and vote against this motion after hearing some of the contributions from individual schools, from these members. I think head teachers and parents are going to be looking at some of the comments you've made and the intransigence that you're about to show, and they're going to be horrified. Councillor Codling mentioned this phrase, I've heard it before, millions of pounds sitting in school accounts. It's the exact words she used. It's not doing nothing. For some of these projects, it takes years to raise funds in order to invest in them. And because we can categorise it as uncommitted, staffing's not committed. That's not what I'm hearing from schools. That's not what I'm hearing from several schools. Who's telling the truth? And yeah, a review's ongoing. We're a hands-on administration. Yeah, that's the point. You've got your hands on our school's money. A review ongoing. We're 6 months through the financial year, for heaven's sake. When are you going to finish it? In July, you said to head teachers, contact us. I want to talk to you. Well, we're now in September. We're still hearing this. This is an absolute omni-shambles. It really is. Now, how about you listen to the very carefully considered remarks that we've had? recognise that you've got this horribly wrong. And think about it, guys. Do you really want to be on the wrong side of this one? You're all going to vote against this motion? Councillor Codling used very careful words. It was like the statement that was issued about the schools voted for it. No schools will be pushed into deficit this year. How about next year, Councillor Codling? What's the situation there? Because the Downs have already said that they're going to be in a hell of a deficit next year because of your actions. Very carefully wording. And we're not taking the PTA funds, not according to the Downs. Who's telling the truth? And never mind that. I'm an accountant, as you know, Councillor Vickers. You're a big fan of accountants. If the PTA have raised £500,000 and it's sitting over there in a separate account, or even if it's not, and the school has a budget, and along come West Berkshire Council and say, we're clawing back £500,000. Well, there's a £500,000 hole in the budget, isn't there? Doesn't matter whether it's that £500,000 or the PTA raised £500,000. £500,000's gone. The PTA have raised £500,000. And the school's no better off because of the £500,000 clawback. Don't get bogged down in semantics and careful wording. You owe the residents more than that. Vote with your conscience, please, people. Vote for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's not funny.
Thank you. I will now ask the monitor officer to take a vote on the motion by a show of hands.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please therefore ask all members in favour of the proposed motion to please raise their hands now? Thank you. Can I please ask members who are against to raise their hands?
Everyone.
And thank you. Can I just ask any abstentions, just to be clear? Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that the motion has not been carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for their attendance. I formally close the meeting. I can instruct the Zoom host to end the live broadcast, please.